What's up, guys? I hope everything is going well, technically. And um, this is kind of a pop-up live, and I know that we announced it, but I just really want to make this kind of a regular thing. It's just a bit. It was. My whole schedule was a bit hectic during past weeks when we started the community, but now I really want to make this a live session in this community, in the wild visual storyteller community, a regular. And I really wanted to be very open, very honest, and I want to discuss questions with you that you might not be willing maybe to ask elsewhere. Like really, really interesting things that are on your mind, but you don't have the place to discuss them elsewhere. Like I can see my room here, so guys, bear with the room. It's just a very good room for me to have the live. So I got a question from one of you, and I got this question from to one of my DM messages on Instagram, actually. And the question basically was how to establish oneself as an artist. And I would love to share my advice. What, like, I don't think that I'm a guru in this topic, but still I want to share and maybe add some of my 2 cents for you who have like completely no idea about how this is happening and stuff. And so I hope that this is gonna be the first one of a long series of sorry, there's a notification of, oh my god, what is going on? Hey, yeah, I'm back, sorry. So I really want you to send me questions, and that can be either on our discussion board, like timeline, or you can send me them in direct messages, and I will choose the ones that are most interesting, and I think that my answer to those questions will benefit the whole community. And I wasn't getting ready for this live. I will be just free flowing, just rambling on the topic and sharing my opinions, my experiences. But before I do that, before I discuss this particular question, I want to tell you just a few words about how I see this community growing and going and what I want it to be. And yes, I love seeing your work. It's great that you share it. It's great that we also get comments on the work, and some of you share, others comment. It's super great. Like those, if you guys enjoy creative challenges, it's awesome. However, I really don't want our community to turn into one of those Facebook groups when people just share their work and get comments. I mean, there's like gazillions of those groups, and this is not why I started this group. I mean, it's really nice to get those little comments and encouragements, and we need them definitely. Yet, there's, again, I want this group to be special. I want this group to be very highly interactive. I want this to be like a real community, not just for sharing the work, but for sharing your inspirations, your epiphanies, your realizations, your findings maybe. Like I recently shared some, oh my god, again, sorry, like a podcast episode with you. And I would love to do that more and more. And maybe if you find something like maybe a book on art or on fine art photography, on just like a interesting book that you think might be beneficial for others, please go ahead and post about that. I mean, that's the value. And post your backstage videos. That's amazing. Post your sketches. That would be cool. Because if we just post the final work and get the comments, like, well, it just turns to another Instagram basically. And yeah. But if we actually share the process or share some things that triggered us somehow, and which we think that others can also learn from and benefit, that's gonna be like a really, really valuable place to always check in. And guys, if you resonate with this topic, please, I know that at least 3 people are watching right now. Send me something. Because I mean, interaction is the core why I started this community. Because I mean, I want us to be like really, really close. Seriously. Because you're here in this group just because you're trusted, just because you heard my invitation, you got maybe a personal invitation, and maybe you were on one of my courses. And especially if you were in one of my courses, you know about the community experience and how valuable that is, that you see that there's people like you here and they care about the same stuff. And even though our work can be different, our processes sometimes are very similar and we can learn from one another. And like, that's the best thing. That's what I'm looking for. And I also want this community to be a growth vehicle for myself. So I like want you to, like, very selfishly, of course, I want you to share people who you were inspired by as well, like photographers maybe. And it would be great, like, if we could create maybe inspiration albums, or we can do like an inspiration challenge, and we can all share the photographers. And I will think about that. That's actually a great idea. And Sita, if you're watching, we should do that. Because when during my courses people are gathering their inspirations, and when they're sharing that, I learn so much and other people learn so much. And this is how we educate ourselves. This is like the power of community in action. Another thing, I also want to get those raw, honest questions from you guys, like really, really difficult ones. And if you're kind of feeling shy to post them on the timeline of the community, and I mean, for now you were really like not very active with those questions. It's just not the way I want it to be. I really, I encourage you highly to either send those questions in DMs, wherever. You can send it via email if you have my email. You can send it on Facebook. You can send it to Sita or to me, and we will choose the best ones. And I will answer those in these kind of lives. And I believe that those will be beneficial for, first of all, me, because I will be pushing myself to answer those questions. And first of all, that's gonna be, of course, even like when you ask the question, that's the first moment when you start changing and learning. Even if you don't get the answer, you start directing your attention to some important topic. And then your brain turns on and begins to search for the answers. So, getting back to the main question that I want to answer in this live is how to establish oneself as an artist. And I will give you some of my personal experiences. And I have been trying to do that for at least, let's say, well, it's not from the very start of my career, definitely, because if you're not very familiar with my story, I just will briefly tell you about it. I started with photography about 10 years ago, and I started as a hobbyist. I didn't go to any like school officially. I just took a very short course on the technical part of the photography. And I started as a hobbyist. I was just basically doing kind of like travel photography in the city that I moved to, which was St. Petersburg in Russia. And I just photographed random details on the streets. And St. Petersburg is an amazingly beautiful city, and there were so many details, and people were passing them by, and I was like fascinated by those things. And then with time, when I began to get a bit more serious about my photography hobby, I started shooting people, like basically my friends. And when many of them had my pictures on their avatar pics on social media, I was like, okay, maybe I have something here. And I began to start, I got this glimpse of a dream that I can switch from a marketing job to this creative photography job. And of course, if that's a switch, then you need to make money from that switch. And of course, that's why I started to look for different paid gigs. And that's how I got into studio portraits, I got into wedding photography, family, interior, well, basically anything. At that, actually from the very beginning, I also discovered the fine art photography, but I didn't know how to turn that into a profession, and it never occurred to me that it can actually be something that you can do for a living, and that you can just be a fine art photographer and basically an artist. I mean, in my mind, being an artist was like you're starving and you don't have any money, and that's not a real job. And I went to an art school for kids when I was a teenager. So I studied like classical fine art and painting and drawing and like pencil drawing and oil painting and history of arts. Yet I graduated from that school with being completely sure that I have no talent, and I'm really, really bad at drawing and painting. Though I had even like high grades, but that didn't confirm any of my talent. And I saw that other people were more inspired, and they were more, basically their work was much better. So, and of course, here come the parents. My mom never thought that it would be a real job. So, well, okay, that aside, I never considered that to be a possibility. And why I tell you this story is that when you try to establish yourself as an artist, first of all, there has to be a switch in your brain. You have to give yourself a permission to be an artist, first of all. And seriously, like, understand this and let this sink in if that's... if you were not growing up understanding that you will be an artist. If you had or still have some photography job, well, not photography, but just like office job, or if photography is just a hobby, even though if you are if you studied in a school, but that's a bit different, I think, because, well, I cannot tell because I've never studied in a university for arts. So first of all, there has to be like a mental permission for yourself. Like, okay, now I'm an artist. And I will be completely honest with you now. I didn't give myself that permission until last summer. Like summer 2019. I was actually telling people that, yeah, I'm a fine art photographer, and I was teaching people, yet I still was sustaining myself from other things, and deep in my mind I didn't understand that selling limited edition prints was possible for me, and having exhibitions was possible for me as well, and having my prints on gallery walls was also possible for me. I'm just like, that was not my focus. I was trying hard to get to work with clients here in Finland, and it's like, it's very, very complicated process. Especially, I don't speak Finnish, and of course there is a Finnish speaking photography community here, and it's kind of hard to get into that. There are established photographers, and there are brands that are concentrated only on local market things. So, and they're not very willing to work with some, let's say, immigrant photographer. And especially if you take like the bigger picture, I am from Russia, and it's not always regarded as a good sign for Finnish people. No judgments, like, I'm not complaining. I didn't get any like really bad reactions to me being here yet. That's just the fact. So I was trying hard to get the clients in different areas, but then I was telling people that I'm a fine art photographer, and just, in fact, wasn't focusing on that. But at some point, I was writing in my journal and kind of reassessing my goals for the year, because it was like the middle of the year, and I was like, it was kind of like an epiphany. I mean, it sounds very esoterical and maybe woo-woo for some of you, but I hear that it's kind of true for many artists, and not just artists, but people who realize what they need to do. I'm like, what if I stop pursuing those clients and just focus on my fine art? And when I had that thought, it felt so good. Like, I felt such relief, and like, yes, this is what I have to do. And soon after that, I really, like, soon, maybe in a couple of weeks, I sold my first limited edition print. I was starting getting requests from galleries, and it was like they were just coming. Before that, when I was trying to push myself in a different direction, I was like, yeah, but that's just not happening for me, and everyone is right. It's just not possible to set that as a career. So, bottom line in this thing, you need to give yourself permission. How do you give yourself permission? Is that you broaden your outlook. You see that things that you thought were impossible are actually possible for other people, and if they're possible for other people, they're possible for you too. It's just a core thing. Anyway, for a long time, I was also like looking at other photographers who had, I don't know, let's say huge sales and huge exhibition shows, and they're traveling all over the world with their exhibitions and giving talks and stuff like that. And I was like, oh yeah, of course, but she's more talented than me, and so on. It's just not, it won't be possible for me. But at that very moment when I understood that things are possible for me too, that I'm not actually worse, and if I like my technical thing, like or my ability to, let's say, give public speeches is a bit under that level, that can be improved. Totally. So when I got that right in my head, when I brought that idea home, things began to happen. And I started with this thing just because I really, really, really think that if you don't get that right, all the other steps, which will be more practical, all those other steps, they just won't work. Because those gonna be the obvious ones. So, let's say you are now very confident that you have chosen this path. The next thing is to understand, of course, that your work is valuable, and that if you don't value your work, no one else will. I mean, it's really, really stupid sometimes of us to think that, oh, my work is so bad, but secretly we're hoping that there is some like magic genie or a fairy auntie comes to us, Cinderella's, and they will say, oh my god, her work is genius, and we'll just put that on gallery walls and we'll sell that for like thousands of euros. That just won't happen if you don't value your work. So understand that valuing your work is hugely important. And then, of course, the very basic practical things. You need to establish a web presence as an artist. So everywhere on your socials, you need to state fine artist or like fine art photographer or like whatever. And it actually, if even you are not believing that completely yet, when you see that, it will give you a little bit more confidence, like everywhere on your Facebook page, on your Instagram page, your website is like hugely important. So if you don't have a website yet, but you want to establish yourself as an artist, get a website now. I mean, it doesn't have to be like some huge thing. It can be like really, really simple. There are so many services right now. Don't ask me which I use, because I use a Russian service. It's awesome, but I just don't think that it's gonna be valuable for you guys. But if you are from Russia, I can recommend you some. Go for the web. Then, so your website, it should state what you're doing, what kind of artist you are, and that you are an artist, so that you believe in it. Later on, what else? If you are, again, serious about being an artist, you need an artist statement. And I know if you have heard about this before, you know that it's such a pain to write a statement, and I hated this process. I mean, that's just a very short paragraph. It can be like maybe like 5 sentences max, but it has to summarize everything about your work, where you're coming from, what influences you, and what are you trying to say with your work, basically. Why are you creating? And if you haven't tried answering those questions, I highly recommend it, because we're here to create meaningful art, and we believe that photography is not just gear and technical perfection. It's a means of making an impact. And if we are interested in making an impact, we definitely need to understand what kind of impact we want to make, right? So yes, make an artist statement, put it on your website. And some of you will say like, oh, but it's just a new website and no one will see it and blah, blah, blah. Well, it's needed. Maybe even if your like career path is tough, and for many of you and for me included, it's gonna be tough. In 10 years, people will see it. And if people will start getting into your website, they will need to understand, okay, she is really serious about her art and she has serious inspirations and she was influenced by that and that and that artist, and not just photographer, but she was influenced by literature and by poetry and by the surrealism movement or stuff like that. I see, Kika, your question about fuel that self-confidence. I will get on to that later, but let me continue with that. So, artist statement, and then if you, as any artist, established artist, want to sell your work, understand that you are not just selling your work, you're selling a lifestyle to people. And that was like also an epiphany for me, though I had and still have a very profound marketing background, and I was working with in the marketing field for over like 6 years at least. You are selling a lifestyle to people. So what kind of things will they get if they buy your work on the wall, so that it's there on the wall? Will they be able to tell their story to their guests, for example? Will they be able to just look at it and feel peaceful or feel inspired or just really like to be around your work? That's very, very crucial. So understand what kind of lifestyle you are offering to people with your work. And when you understand that, come up with explanations for all of your pieces. Maybe like, okay, all of your pieces can be really hard, but take the best ones. Take the ones that get maybe more attention publicly, or just your favorite ones, because, well, those can be two different categories, definitely. I love certain images and I have my favorites, but then they're not really popular with the public. Well, it's okay as well. I don't mind the public opinion, but if I feel that I want this particular piece to have a story, I give it to that piece. And if I feel that this this photo is for this or that reason is popular and I can make money with it, why not? I will also give that piece a story if it wasn't started from the story originally, because not all of my images started with a story. And if you have downloaded my Plan for Magic ebook, there I speak about 3 ways of starting an image. And one of them is when you just have something like a really cool prop, and that was my way for starting an image for a long, long time, and not with this particular theme or topic. So, write explanations, descriptions, stories for your work, be it a series or individual image, or if you're not, because I know that in our community we don't just have photographers, there are also fine artists and illustrators, so every creative is welcome here. Visual creative, I mean, especially. But the recent podcast that I shared, that was a conversation with a poet, and I found it like humongously inspirational and practical and valuable for me as a photographer. He has so much practical advice, this NQ guy, that I can basically apply to my photography. So if you haven't listened to that podcast, I highly recommend it. Next. So we are getting back to this thing that you need to understand what kind of message you are sending to the world. What kind of stories are behind each and every one of your works or your series. And the important thing here is to be very, very honest when you come up with those stories, because if the story is not that honest, then people won't resonate with it as much. They will feel the fake. So, but storytelling is amazingly, humongously again important for selling your work. I mean, it's just a very practical thing. People usually don't want to invest any money before they feel the connection with the piece of art. That's why telling a compelling story which will resonate with your audience is very, very important. I mean, yes, of course, there are people who buy art for just simple investments, but I truly, again, if you're trying to establish yourself as an artist, I recommend to go to Artsy, which is a big online platform for selling art, and they don't let individual artists, like independent artists, to represent themselves there. They're only for galleries and like big names, but they have a lot of educational material for collectors, and you can read those and understand what are the trends now, why people are buying art, how many people are buying art for investment, and how many people are buying art for the aesthetics of it or for some other reasons. So lots and lots of really, really amazing information on that website. They have like videos, they have a blog, and just really, really cool information there. So recommend it if you want to establish yourself as an artist. And millennials are now buying art, definitely not, they are not driven by investing in art. And let's face it, we are in this artist category that we're not high level art, meaning I'm not Henri Cartier-Bresson. So at the moment, my prints, they cannot sell for that kind of money. Or if you're a painter, you're not Van Gogh. It's just unreal to sell for that kind of money. But and therefore, most likely, our pieces will not be bought for the reasons of investment. And therefore, we have to be very, very careful about the stories that we put out. And again, that putting those stories into words, it can seem like very, very hard, and it is, I know. And putting that information on every website and on every online platform where you sell art, it's a lot of work. It's not always entertaining. It's very boring. Get sometimes, because those online platforms, they're not also optimized for artists, that they just batch at it like everything. But if a person wants to invest money in your product, in your piece of art, they will read and they will be interested in what they invest in money to. And newsflash, people won't invest a penny if they don't know anything about you and about what you're trying to tell again with your art. So write those descriptions for the series or for individual works even. And then of course my personal recommendation would be to share your art everywhere, and don't get intimidated by the fact that your closest people, like in your closest circle, they don't regard you as an artist. I mean, you start with yourself, and then you begin telling everyone in the world that, hey, I'm an artist, and now I'm an artist. And people, your parents, maybe your spouse, your closest friends, that are like, what the hell? What kind of an artist are you? Like, yeah, disregard those things, because when they will see feedback from the world about you, about your art, about yourself, when they will understand that other people consider you to be an artist, then they will change their opinion. And for now, you will have to kind of like bear with this period of time when they are not believing you that you're an artist. So again, I know that not all of the artists go hard on social media, but I would recommend it, and that's my path, and this is how people are finding out about me, from my Instagram mainly. And yes, I have like a website, of course, now, but yeah, and now I have an active art finder profile as well, and there's not too many works, but it somehow is ranked maybe in search engines, and people from galleries also look through those things. So I recommend to establish a profile on Saatchi Art, on Art Finder, and there are actually other platforms. You can also research them. I made an attempt to do that myself, and I registered on several platforms, yet I never got to actually establish a good profile there, which will have all of my works descriptions and some. Because sometimes I know it can feel like a waste of time, but it's not always like that. And especially if you're now locked down, and if you sometimes, you cannot create all the time, and I totally understand that. Therefore, you can take breaks. You can do the important marketing work or establishment work first, and then take a break and go create something. And then again, do the necessary work of selling yourself to the world, and then, okay, go back to creation. So that's how it should be. The next step. I know that many people, also artists, they recommend to contact galleries and simply do the cold emailing thing. I've done that, never worked for me. Maybe I wasn't that persistent. The important tips about cold emailing galleries, and whether you're a photographer or fine artist, you need to know a little bit something about this gallery and about the gallerist, at least like a first name. At least, because those people, they get tons and tons of emails, and those emails are simply, they all look alike, and usually they don't respond to people who they don't know. Like, just imagine yourself getting about 100 emails per day, you won't be able to look through all of them. And this is how life is. And if your email is somehow stands out, and it can stand out by either an interesting subject line or just put in that knowledge of the gallery in, then you get a chance of response. For now, I wasn't. Well, actually, yes, there was one gallery here in Helsinki that replied to my Instagram message, actually. And that could be also an option for you, especially if you're trying to contact local galleries. But again, I understand that the gallery saw my Instagram and they saw the following, and for Finland 58,000 is like a huge number, and that's why they were more willing to react. Well, if you are an established, you have an established profile, that could be really, really cool. And of course, curate your Instagram profiles. I mean, if it's an artistic profile, there should be only stuff related to your art, of course. I mean, if you are, let's say, a wedding photographer who wants to become a fine art photographer, remove all the wedding stuff from there, or just create a separate account for just fine art photography. So, I think I gave lots and lots of tips today, and probably it's not everything, but I hope that you liked it. I hope that you will be able to use it. I hope that I will get more questions like that from you guys, because that also helps me to develop my thinking in just the free flow state, and I kind of like it. So I'm wondering how many people will watch it and get all the golden nuggets. But let's see, if you watch it and if you find it useful and if you want me to make more of these kind of lives, you need to comment on the video. Otherwise, how will I know? So, happy Easter if you celebrate. I wish you to have the great rest of the weekend, and I will see you next time, guys. Oh yeah. One more thing before we disappear. If you haven't yet, please book your seat on a free online masterclass, which is coming on Wednesday. It's gonna be like a huge, well, not a huge, but it's gonna be a very cool event where I will be also sharing some stuff and like actually teaching. So yeah, guys, sign up for the masterclass. Sita will put the link here. If there's no link, you can also go to my either Facebook page. There are so many links on the lives, and just if you go to my website, which is dashapears-r.com, immediately on the homepage there is a link to signing up for this masterclass. Okay, see you next time.